anything that you do, there's no universal best option. It all depends. The truth is, financial planning is deeply personal.
Welcome to Empowered Homefront, where we dive deep into strategies for health, wealth, relationships, and faith. And today we have a special guest, Jesse Andrews. He's an expert in financial services, estate planning, wealth transfer, and the founder of Wise Path Financial Group. Jesse has helped countless families protect their legacies and build generational wealth. Today, we're going to be breaking down some of the biggest myths in financial services, diving into stories of ethical decision making and unlocking Jesse's fair advantage, because this dude is a whiz in the industry. You're not going to want to miss this. All right, Jesse, my man, I'm super excited to get this rolling. You know, you're one of these guys that every time I have a conversation with, like, my world gets a little bit bigger, right? It's insane, like, the value you bring, man. Last time we spoke, you got me rolling with Wise Path Financial Groups, but now you're opening up something completely different. And you just told me that it's like you just closed a big deal on law firms. So now you're able to serve people like nationwide, which is crazy, man. So tell me what you got going on.
Yeah, so we have partnered up with a broker deal that feels very comfortable in us working all across the country with our financial advisors. Again, WisePath Group has 73 offices all across the country. And with our recent acquisition of Estate Mentors is a software company that has 619 estate and elder law attorneys across the country. So now we're able to serve not only our clients for financial services, but also estate planning.
73 offices. I can imagine, man, having all those people just answering to me, man. That's crazy.
There's like some layers to it. I mean, we've got a great family. We've got good systems in place to make sure everybody, but financial advisors, they're independent thinkers, and they're doing things the Wise Path way, which is great, and that's how we're able to best serve our clients. And with our most recent acquisition of Estate Mentors, now we're able to help those clients even further with their estate plans and with wealth transfer and selling their businesses and exiting. So it's been really impactful across the country.
Yeah, I remember the first time we met, man. I mean, it was crazy because I was still in my air traffic control career, and I was just getting into this whole new world of, like, not even wealth building, because at the time I didn't understand what that actually meant. Y-
Mhm.
And I came across this whole thing, infinite banking and all that stuff, and
Yeah.
I came across a company, and only thing I knew is like, I need to get in touch with whoever that does that thing. They reached out to you and like, you need to get a hold of this guy.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that was another financial advisor that was in our industry that basically just deals with investments. And then they reached out to me and said, "Hey, Jesse handles more of the risk management and wealth transfer or the wealth creation stuff. And so he can set these specialized programs, be your own banker, infinite banking, endless banking, however you want to say it. But it's just basically being your own bank and taking control of some of the assets you have, which is why you came to us. And so, we're more of the surgeons. We're not generalists, most likely. We're the people that go in and really put together the strategies in place to help clients, not only build their wealth, but also pass on their wealth.
Like, it was a super cool experience for me because I kept talking to one person after another and they couldn't answer my questions. But like,
Mhm.
you, the guy, you know? But
Yeah.
what was so cool about that, man, like, you mean the world to me, because like, not only were you the guy and you're super busy, but like, I remember you took time out, not only like 1 hour a day, but we spread it out across weeks. And like, you on this stuff with me and my wife, and like, you was able to overcome a lot of her objections, like uncertainties, but then also, dude, the value, thank you. Like, that was been game changing for us. Like, it's been absolutely amazing. So, with the biggest myth in financial services, because we just dropped a lot of like techno babble that probably
Mhm.
don't really understand, right? So
Okay.
let's open this up, man. What's the biggest myths in the financial services world?
I think the biggest myth is that the idea that one size fits all solution, like if it's life insurance or if it's investments or if it's real estate, everybody's trying to sell their one size fits all solution. And whether, you know, anything that you do, there's no universal best option. It all depends. The truth is financial planning is deeply personal. And that's why we work with individuals and families, it's a real success lies in the personalized strategies aligned with the individual's goals, ambitions, risks. There is no silver, silver bullet or magic bullet that's tailored. So we have to build that kind of from the ground up, just like we did with you and many other families, where we took it step by step, and then we're able to pivot as needed as goals and situations of life change. Right. Like
Mhm.
you just said, you went from air traffic controlling, where we were really focused on building that wealth creation and protecting your family if something happens to you, to working on the real estate side of things and really helping you build the business and the legacy that you're going to build there, so you can pass it on with as little as taxes as possible, and help you pass that same on to your family generations for generations to come.
Yeah, so there's no magic bullet.
Yep.
And right now, we live in an age. This is one thing that I'm fighting, and like we're launching the Dill Boss project just for this one thing that I'm about to let you know about. But
Hmm.
it's Guru University.
Hmm.
People look at all these people who are leaning up against Lamborghinis and they got the big house and all these things, and they're telling them to go do this. Well, then people go try to go do that, but they miss all these little pieces that they never accumulated, before that happens.
Right.
If you was talking to somebody, the average normal American who has a beautiful family at home, provides for that family, but they're just trying to get ahead. Where do they need
Hmm.
to
Yeah. So usually when we're dealing with a brand new family, let's say they recently got married, or maybe they just had some kids, and now they're coming to the realization they really need to put together some kind of strategy or planning in place to help their financial future. The first place I would start with is their skill set. How are they building their skills for their profession? Because the fastest way to build your wealth is to create more income, and that usually comes from their skill set. So that's the first thing we oftentimes look at. So if you are a engineer, what other certificates that can you get in, project management or other things out there? There's other skill sets you can get to build your income. And then we deal with a principle, like just fundamental principles. So 50% of your income goes towards your needs, 30% towards your wants, and 20% towards your savings. So those are just fundamental principles of how we build wealth. And if you just keep to those principles, you'll be fine. And a lot of times, when you are in that place, there's a lot of debt. You have a lot of obligations. So we need to protect that with like looking at debt strategies and seeing how we can protect against, not falling short on any credit card bills or, any obligations that we may have. So, you know, for a new family just starting out, increasing their skills, keeping to that 50-30-20 rule to where they're putting 20% of savings away is really crucial. And then, making sure that they manage their debt appropriately. Debt isn't necessarily bad, as you probably tell your people, your listeners here that are in the real estate world. Debt is a tool. There are good times that we can use debt, and there's bad times that we can use debt. So we just need to make sure that for that new family starting out, that they put those fundamental pieces in place for how they set themselves for success, so they are disciplined to do it every single time. And that doesn't matter if you're making $1,000 a year or making $10 million a year. Those principles are universal. So
Yeah, that's very well said, man. And I agree with you 100% because you mentioned skills. I just discovered this a couple of years ago, and I realized that the difference between me and the guy on YouTube, the difference between me and my friends, whoever that is that I'm looking at, is literally wisdom. Well, what is wisdom? It isn't age, right? And I tell my kids this, and like me and my dad would be like, "Well, I'm older, so I'm wiser." Like, not necessarily, right?
mhm,
Like, you can have somebody who is 80 years old, but they only developed one skill set
right,
versus a 20-year-old who's already developed 4 or 5 skill sets and married. Like, that individual is way wiser than the 80-year-old who's single and only did one job.
right.
Right? So I love that fact that you pointed out, like, develop your skill set because that's what we need to focus on more than ever. And with financial services and with financial, um, I don't even call it education because you're almost orchestrating this. And that's what I realized with like some of the stuff that me and you set up with us because we've been using it like crazy, man. Like, and it's already paid for itself. So like we done really well with that, but there's layers of it. So if you have a individual who is working every week, collecting their paycheck, but
Uh-huh.
yet fighting grocery prices increase, their everyday living costs increase, and then
Yep.
they hear about all these complex strategies, right? Like we just introduced infinite banking, but that's
Yep.
not right for everybody.
It's
So
not.
what do you have to say to that person?
Yeah, so that person that's in there, again, like we talked about before, is increasing their skill set. If they're getting squeezed because of grocery prices, gas prices, just overall inflation, the best thing they can do is to increase their skill set or find mentors that can help them get in front of other job opportunities to find more wealth and more income. Because oftentimes it may just be, one new relationship or one new skill set that can bring you to the next level to where you have the confidence to get that new job or to take on more responsibility to where you're earning more. So that's what I would say for those people. And then, outside of that, like we just talked about, just fundamentally just continue to save. And that 20% of savings, we always like to talk to, there's three buckets. You have short term, long term, and retirement buckets. Each bucket is equal as important. So short term is for emergency funds. Long term is money that you're going to use 10 to 15 years from now. That can be to retire early, start a business, buy some real estate, and then your last bucket is retirement bucket. That's simply for retirement. And each bucket has its place in the 20% savings that we set aside from every dollar that we make.
I love that concept. So that person developing more skills, get more income coming in, get that secured, like just focus on educating. Now, what's the next level, right? So now that person is able to put in that 20% in savings, they have some extra cash.
Yep.
Like, is that the point where they would actually reach out to you and be like, "Hey, what's the next step?"
One of our junior advisors that helps people at that particular level. And what we would do from there is we'd make sure that their risk profile is correct, making sure that all of their insurance, auto insurance, homeowners insurance, renters insurance, life insurance, health insurance is all set up correctly. Because once you are earning a good income and you have the money saved up in there, we want to protect what you have. I mean, one medical bill could wipe out your entire savings, right?
Yeah.
One job loss could wipe out all of your long-term savings because you're having to find a new job to support yourself. So the next thing we want to do is really make sure that we protect the savings that we have, so we don't have these major desperate portion. We want to set ourselves up for success. So it's making sure that we understand the risks ahead of us. That's the next step, is making sure that we have the right pieces or components to offset that risk appropriately. And then after we understand the risks and we have the right tools inside to help us with that risk, then it's really wealth building. And this could be from, are we going to go back to school to go get our master's degree? Or are we going to go invest in some real estate? Or are we going to now put more money into investments at a higher pace so that dollar is working as hard as what we worked for that dollar to make it work, let it go further? So there's a lot of things that we can do at that point, and it really depends on, again, no one size fits all. We really have to know where that person wants to go, so that we can tailor a strategy around that.
Beautiful. Okay, so now you've got somebody that you're working with, and what is their really expectations? And the way I'm asking this question is, I see this happens too, and I fell into this trap because I remember I'm just like, okay, well, I'm going to do this new thing, and in a year, it's going to pay for itself. In a year, I'm going to be better, right? In this very very short time span, and it goes back to the saying, like people overestimate what they can accomplish in a year and underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade, right?
It's like any renovation; it takes twice as long and cost is twice as expensive, right?
Yeah.
That's usually how it goes, especially if it's your first time.
Yeah.
So disappointment is just unmet expectations, right? So if the client is disappointed or if I'm disappointed, right, with how we're working together, it's because we didn't set the expectation up front of what we can expect. So I always let the client set the expectation. Okay, if I say, hey, when do you think that you can get this certification, or when do you think you can save this amount of money based on what we just talked about? They set the expectation. So if they don't meet that goal, then they know why I'm disappointed when we go to our annual review of where they're not at where they want to be, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm a chief accountability officer in some cases, where I have to keep our clients accountable for what they said they wanted to do, and they set the expectation, not me, right?
Yep.
And then we can work on that and adjust and pivot as we need to moving forward.
Yeah, I remember you going through that with me and Lori, and you sent like this big printout and like all these things, and like I didn't understand it. I didn't know what we was looking at. But then you set us down and you drew out this on this board. And me, I'm just, simple man from the South, but you drew out this peak, this mountain, and you're like, we're here and I'm gonna help you get up the mountain. But then what's more important is I'm gonna help you come down the mountain.
That is so true. And just like Mount Everest, most people don't die on the way up to the mountain. They make it to the peak, they die on the way down, right? So
Yes.
it's about saving up for that retirement or what retirement looks like to them, and then making sure that we get down the mountain so we're able to pass on our assets and making sure that we have enough income to last us for a long time without having to worry about those risks. So you're exactly right.
Yeah. I love it when you told me that, man, because you're just like, yeah, it's coming down the mountain that's the big issue. And like that really hits with that whole decade principle, like we've got to really think about what's coming.
Right.
And then it the sooner we start, it goes back to when's the best time to plant a tree? Yesterday, right? Like, or when's the best time to buy real estate? Well, it was yesterday, right? It's always, but the time is always now. So we got to
Right.
get moving,
The
right?
next the next best time to buy, real estate, or the next best time to plant a tree is today. It was yesterday before, now it's today. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So let people know, man, just how amazing of a man you are. And I know it might be weird for you to say that, but I want people to know about how you do things like the right things whenever you're faced with times that are difficult because as you take people up this mountain,
Mhm.
been in a situation where like I went to, and I'm gonna call their names out because you shouldn't do it. It was Edward and Jones, dude. I was a 18-year-old kid. I just flipped a vehicle, and I made like $3,000 out of this vehicle, and I got told, well, you need to go invest that. The only thing I knew was up the street was this big sign that said Edward and Jones Investing. So I went and did that and then sat down with them and they maybe put my $3,000 in this mutual fund at the age
Mhm.
of 18ish. And dude, I left that mutual fund in there for almost 10 years and made, I don't know, $500.
Oof. Yeah, tough.
Yeah.
Right. And there's nothing wrong to say mutual funds are not a bad vehicle for investments. It's managed by someone that has a lot of other investments in a portfolio that's being managed. It's being mutually managed by that advisor in that fund. And there's many great mutual funds. And again, I can't speak to the specific situation, but again, in that scenario, probably the best thing that that advisor should have done was to really break down the strategy and see where you wanted to go, rather than just taking the $3,000 and putting it away for 10 years and never looking at it again. Every year, we're going to reassess where that money is and what we want to do with that money. Okay. And today it might be investments because we don't have any other option. I've got a full-time job, but tomorrow it could be to upgrade, renovate, do something to improve my skills or my investment situation because the investment isn't yielding past inflation or past what I want it to do based on the risk that I'm willing to take. So every year you should assess those strategies and make sure that it aligns with your goals. So that's what I would say in that situation. And it's hard that people are putting that set and forget it mindset, but you really have to be good stewards of your assets and your estate.
Yeah, very well said. And that's one thing is true with real estate, right? And it took me, I mean, I don't know, like I'm 7-ish years into my real estate investing journey, but it took me probably more than half of that to realize the thing of it's not buy and hold forever.
Mhm.
It's buy and hold until you figure out a better opportunity.
Right. And that's where we say the savings goes into three essential buckets, right? You have short term for your emergency funds. You have a long term, which is money you're going to keep in there for other opportunities. It could be to buy a house. It could be to start a business. It could be to buy real estate. It could be to retire early. And then the last bucket is simply there for retirement. And I think all three buckets are absolutely crucial when you save. Because if you get into a short-term holding, rather than having to borrow money, exorbitant, 25 to 50% interest rates, you have that emergency fund to set aside. And instead of having to really go to friends and family. You've already got money set aside for that long term investment in yourself or in your future in that long term savings. And then you don't want to touch your retirement savings because if all heck breaks loose, you want to make sure that when you get to the finish line, you get to the top of Mount Everest to retire, you want to be able to get down safely, right? And having those funds there. So
Yeah.
each part of the savings is equally as important.
Yeah. So tell me about a little bit of part because working with a financial advisor and what
Mhm.
y'all I know from firsthand experience, I'll speak for myself, but
Mhm.
you're skeptical because normally when we reach out to people like you, we aren't in a position where like we have a money problem. Instead,
Right.
to create a money problem, and we're like, I'm not contacting Jesse because he's going to charge me.
Right. And that's 100% true. That is the, highest bar to barrier is generally, we're not working with clients that have less than $3 million. So they usually have typically 3 million or more dollars, or they have income of $300,000 or more. That's generally who we're working with on a daily basis. But we have grown over these last, 9 years pretty heavily, 73 offices across the country to where we can offer and expand our services to where there is no fee initially upfront with our junior advisors to be able to work with that person. And they're able to work with them, in their careers and help build with them and grow with them through those challenges. So, yeah. So I'm happy to say now we are able to offer some of those services that people that are in their mid-career, early career, that we're able to help with no financial planning fee or no services fee. So, yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about a time because I know you did it with me. Like, but tell me about a time whenever you worked with someone though, and it didn't benefit you short term
Right.
at all.
So, yeah, one of the times that I can think of that it didn't benefit me at all is we had a client that was looking to sell his coal mining business. And the coal mining business, obviously, by setting up the deal and helping them exit and allowing them to get financing, we get a service fee for helping that client. And it was a pretty substantial business. But at this time, he was still working on several acquisitions to grow, buy, and build his overall business, which allows him to have a higher EBITDA, earnings before taxations, earning and amortization, right? And so his EBITDA was going to be higher in the next 6 to 7 months. So instead of closing the deal today, I said we definitely need to wait until those two other acquisitions because that's going to help us grow our EBITDA for a higher valuation because we knew these deals were in the pipeline. So yes, I could have gotten compensated at a much higher rate by closing the deal right there and then, but we honestly help our clients because honest, intelligent effort is always rewarded. That's kind of a main principle of WisePath.
Mm.
Again, honest, intelligent effort is always rewarded. So as long as we're honest with our efforts with our client, it's always going to come back to reward us. And it did. The client was able to get a higher valuation. The private equity firm that was able to purchase it, he was able to get a bigger piece of the deal. So as that private equity company continued to build and buy more businesses in that demographic area, then he was going to prosper every single time they sold to another bigger private equity or possibly go public. And so his shares would continue to grow. So that's one time where we foregoed our personal interest to help our clients. That's just the most recent experience that I can speak of, you
No,
know?
I mean, that's amazing. I mean, what I heard is this guy trusted in you and you took him and helped him get up that mountain. Even
Mm-hmm.
though it was a delayed gratification for you guys because
Yes.
it was pushed away, but not only was it delayed gratification for you guys, it was a bigger win for him and you, which is amazing, right? Like that's, I talk a lot about you got to know your team and you got to find your team. And that's
Yes.
amazing to be able to like reach out to Jesse and be like, "Hey man, you're part of my team." And then you
Yep.
give that advisement.
Yeah, and that's what we say to our clients is, when we're looking to onboard a new client, is I tell them I'm interviewing to be on your personal board of directors as your financial person,
Yeah.
right? And I may not be always a good fit for your personal board of directors. I may be a supplement to one of your other directors, either in the capacity of estate planning or investments or taxation. We can definitely be a side partner because you already have a main person that handles that main financial services role, but they're not able to handle everything. So we're a side partner to the actual board of directors, your personal board of directors. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, because I reached out to you, and I reached out to you multiple times whenever we was in a pinch, man. Like, matter of fact,
Yes.
I reached out to you whenever we was like 2 million upside down and some big renovations, and I'm asking you for advice. And I'm sitting here. You probably don't know this because it was on the phone, but I'm sitting here literally in the renovation, in my work clothes, just got out of air traffic, and my
Yep.
kids and wife is helping us like finish this job because I just got taken for almost 100 grand with a contractor.
Yeah.
And I still remember that day, man, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And again, you came to us from several other channels, right? So one
Mhm.
of the other advisors said, "Hey, can you help this guy out?
Yeah,
He's not in our asset class, but we'll definitely help him out because we see potential." And that advisor definitely sold you to
yeah,
us to say like, "Hey, Eric's a great guy," and it's definitely worked out. The relationship has been great. And look at you now; you're doing podcasts, you're building a wealth empire with real estate. So very proud of what you've accomplished, and that's just you continuing to grow and get better 1% every day and evaluating for you and your family. So kudos to you as well.
yeah, I appreciate that. So let's jump into failure, Jesse. So, like, one thing, like turning failure into success, because we live in this world where we don't know what delayed gratification is, and we just talked about it a little bit, but like it's very few and it's very rare for you to actually have like a random stranger conversation, and that conversation goes to pain associated with like delayed gratification. So like when we talk about turning failure into success,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say like is a secret weapon to like really moving that forward?
It's learning from your mistakes, right? Everybody that's been in business has been, it feels like, has been down to their last $2
Mhm.
that they're scraping together, and asking friends and family and trying to get loans to keep everything afloat. And so failure is just part of the process. So as long as you know going into that, and you can mitigate that risk appropriately, I think failure, as long as you can learn from it, is a good thing, right? We just want to make sure that's a softer landing for clients, rather than you put all your eggs into one basket. And we want to make sure that we appropriately take the right risk to go after that goal, right? And early on in my career, one of the things that I really failed with was adopting new technology, because technology does make us more productive, but a lot of technology, I felt like in my early stages of my career, really bogged down the process and able to streamline, you know, the client relationship, and bringing the client on. And so that was my initial reluctance, was to a lot of technology. And now we are so technology focused, AI focused. We just got this estate planning software company, Estate Mentors, that's going to help us streamline our estate and trust work for our clients, which has been just an absolute game changer. So you're not going to make all the right decisions as long as you learn from the mistakes that you do make, right? And I would say to any early entrepreneur, um, it's okay to fail, and it's okay to say that you don't know something. I think that's a sign of intelligence. If I went to my clients and I said, I tried to embellish or lie about things I thought I knew, that, or maybe like stretch the truth on things, I don't think we would have the same clients we would have today. But if I was always honest and open with our clients about if there's something that I truly don't know, because I don't know all the answers, and there may be things that, like, a lot of these new advisors come in, and a lot of the older advisors that have been in courses and continuing education for a long time know better than me. I'm willing to learn, but I don't know it all. And so if there's an answer that I don't know, you will hear me say, I just don't know it. And I think early entrepreneurs should also know that, and know when to ask for help to get themselves educated. Again, kind of building that skill set that we talked about before,
Yeah.
being a conscious incompetent. So, you now know what you don't know, but you still don't know it. So you're conscious to what you don't know, but you're still incompetent, right? And that's where some entrepreneurs are, and you just got to get yourself educated. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm still in that, man. You're a conscious incompetent.
Yeah, so there's 4 levels of the hierarchy of learning. First level is you're an unconscious incompetent. You don't know what you don't know. And then usually a mentor or someone in the industry that you're reaching out to makes you conscious to what you don't actually know, right? And then you go read books, you go read studies and research, and you talk to people. And now you become a conscious competent, right? To where you know what you know and you know how to go get the information. And then to where you've been doing it repetition, 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 to
Oh,
where now you're an unconscious competent where you can do it without thinking, right? Like I can do time value of money calculations basically in my head because I've done the formula so many times on financial calculators. And I know kind of where the numbers lie of how much money we need to save to get to certain places based on inflation and what we can do in investments. So those are unconscious things that I can calculate. And then I can also kind of tell, hey, based on your health and what your risk tolerance is and time horizon, all these things, kind of where you're going to land. That's just an unconscious skill because I've now I can say, knock on wood, I've retired over 800 clients in retirement, and
wow.
we've exited about 130 business owners from their businesses. So we've got a lot of repetition just in myself and our team that we've done. So I mean that's the hierarchy of learning: unconscious incompetent, conscious incompetent, conscious competent, and then unconscious competent. So yeah.
Yeah, so I love that. So I've got this is something that like I'm preaching nonstop, man. I call it skill stacking. Essentially, what I realized was people stop because they're overwhelmed, and when they hit that overwhelm, they get anxiety. And anxiety is like this pressure on what's going to happen in the future,
Right.
but nothing has happened yet.
Right.
And so the principle of skill stacking is like 4 steps. First, you discover, then you
Yes.
learn, and then you execute, then you repeat.
That's right.
And just like what you just said, man, like um, with pretty much everybody that we work with inside the Deal Boss project,
Mhm.
they probably encountered some type of guru who's like, hey, this is your exit strategy. This is a wrap or some fancy thing. Or like we mentioned
Right.
earlier, like, this is infinite banking.
Right.
And then they mistake that for learning.
Right.
And then they get really frustrated because they're overwhelmed, they get anxiety, and then they just quit. They're just like, I'm done. And what we
Right.
challenge people for is just to understand, hey, you just discovered it. Now let's reach out and figure out what's the bare information that we need, learn to execute, and then expect to hit that wall.
Yeah, the wall I feel like most people hit is in the execution phase because you've learned as much as you can to start executing. So you kind of go in what's called the troughs of sorrow to
Yeah.
where you feel really down on yourself because you're not executing very well, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm learning my 7-year-old is learning to read, longer words, and he gets super frustrated because he knows every letter and he knows how to pronounce every letter, but he doesn't know every word, right? And
Mhm.
so that's the hard part is him executing on learning the words. But now, you know, if you just keep using a repetition, like you said, discover, learn, execute, repeat, you're going through this reiterative process to where you can continue to build your skill set. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the way, families need it, like, we do it, and it took me time, and, Lori, right? She's
Yeah.
soft-hearted Southern girl, and then I'm over here like, "Let's go!" And
Right.
we clash, like, I remember sitting down and, I mean, just to be completely transparent, like, you brought us to tears because we're sitting here trying to work some stuff out.
Yeah.
It was
Because
a
finances
really
are
deep
hard.
conversation. Yeah, it's hard,
Yes.
and, anyway, like with Lori, I've been working on her. Like, look, babe, like I get your stress, and we're trying to do a lot of cool stuff that we've never done before, and like keep hitting that wall over and over again. The reason I bring this up and like spend a little time on it is we've been talking a lot about delayed gratification, and then
Mhm.
talking about success through failure.
Mhm.
And if and you mentioned like the unconscious or conscious incompetent, and
Right.
like if you wrap all that up, man, like there's levels to it that people really need to understand about creating their future. That way they can come up that mountain.
Right.
You know?
And
Yeah,
and your spouse is a big part of it, right?
yeah,
And that's why we always make sure that both spouses are me. And I distinctly remember that meeting with you and Lori, right? Because there's a lot of things that you're trying to execute on that just are not going quite your way. And so if we're able to put a plan in place to say, here are the guardrails, here are the, bumpers, on the lane that we need to follow, then we can make sure everybody's on the right page. And again, disappointment is just unmet expectation, right?
Mhm.
So if Lori is disappointed, it's because she had a different expectation than what you set, right? And this also keeps you accountable because now you've got a family and a wife to support. And that's a big responsibility. And so it's like both of you can go together and say, I'm not going to do it alone. Let's do it together. And you
Right.
bring her on this journey with you. And that's how both of you are able to grow and support your family. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, you worked that out for us in that whiteboard. And like, we had some amazing conversation afterwards and we growed like, I mean, a ton since that conversation. But you planted some amazing seeds for us, man. Again, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about diversification.
Yeah.
So that's what we hear, right? Like essentially I'm from a small town, raised to work with my hands. I quickly learned the different levels of value. And working with your hands is the lowest form of value. Um, and then I got sucked into government work, federal work, right? Air Force, air traffic control. And you're almost brainwashed to only invest in that retirement that they put in place for you.
Hmm.
What you hear is diversify, 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 but
Right.
you only have and you only know of discovery, right?
Yep.
You only know of so many vehicles.
Right. This is one of the things that we created around like like everybody has their own like baby steps, right? Like Dave Ramsey has the baby steps. We have our flow chart that helps people like decide where they're at and how to make that decision tree essentially. Because when you're a government worker, if you're an employee at a company and the 401k is the only thing you have is a vehicle to be able to set aside for retirement, you need to discover what else is out there. Again, 401ks are a great tool because it comes directly out of your paycheck and your employer matches a portion of it, right? But
Mhm.
a lot of times there's better investment vehicles that you can put outside that are after tax because we're in a very low in tax environment until 2026 that you could do a Roth IRA or there's accounts that you can put aside that are triple tax free that goes towards your health care. This is a health savings account,
Mhm.
which is different than a flex saving spending account or anything else that you get through your employer. This is a separate account that you can set aside, and actually, it can be deducted from your taxes. It can grow tax deferred and come out tax free. That's what a HSA is, as long as it's for health expenses. And
Mhm.
now you look at all the things that we have now for 529 plans for kids that can be converted into Roth because the kids are getting scholarships or they're not going to secondary education anymore, like a college degree. Only 7%. I think I read that just here recently. Only 7% of jobs out there are requiring a bachelor's degree right now,
Yeah, isn't
which
it?
is just bonkers. So we just really want to make sure that when we think about what we're doing as far as diversification is concerned, is that we do go through this discovery process, say what else is out there and how best can it fit my needs, right? And I'm sure we'll have resources for your listeners about the flowchart or about
Yeah.
the hierarchy of finances or the hierarchy of investments so they can better educate themselves on what else is out there.
Yeah.
And again, those are all tools. I'm a visual learner, so anything that I can do to help my clients visually understand what I'm saying, because sometimes I just don't make sense. I'm a Yankee from Minnesota talking to a whole bunch of Southerners in the Southern states, so sometimes we're not in the same language. But I feel like we always get on the same page by using these tools and a lot of these visuals to further explain what we're trying to accomplish and get them on the same page so that we're all speaking the same language.
Yeah, for sure. So to be direct, is diversification, is that something like you absolutely agree in? Like people need to diversify, or like what's the process of that?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to your skill set, right? So I will say that a lot of people suffer from chasing shiny object syndrome,
Mm.
right? It's
Right.
always the next shiny object that they're trying to go after. Oh, this looks really exciting. Oh, this looks exciting. Like if it's,
Fine.
crypto or meme coins or other investments or, any other real estate strategy from the Burr method to flipping and doing all that kind of stuff to kind of get in the mode or I forget what it's called, like reselling, where you basically hold the contract and then sell it to another investor,
Yep.
right? And so, a lot of us suffer from shiny object syndrome. And I would say when you're looking at building your skill set, it's building on what you already know as your knowledge base and continue to build. I I will tell you, I have never in my 17 years of doing this, I have never met an entrepreneur that has built their career off of diversifying their businesses, right? They focus on their core skill set or their core business first and they build wealth that way. And then all the savings that they have is then diversified.
Mm,
So they get really good at their one thing. If it's their job, if they're in cybersecurity, they're building their certificates. If they're an engineer, they're building their skill set. If it's sales, it's getting better at sales so that you can sell higher and higher ticket items and earn a higher and higher percentage of commission, right? So they've gotten good at that one thing first, and then all the money that they're able to save then is diversified into other things. If that is then their 401k, their Roth IRA, a life insurance retirement plan, or if it's a infinite banking, or if it's any other kind of strategy out there, mutual funds, whatever it may be, as long as it falls into those three buckets, long term, short term, and retirement buckets, then I think you're going to be okay because you're going to have other investments that are going to build uh, build your diversification around your portfolio. But again, initially, everybody builds their wealth on one thing based on their skill set. And
mm.
then from there, they're able to save and then diversify their savings from there. And if your skill set is real estate, great, because real estate is an amazing skill set. There's so much you can do in real estate, like we just discussed. And I've seen, multimillionaires been built off of real estate from their career. And then they go and diversify from there because they don't want to have all their eggs into one basket. And so, and that could be diversification offset or like kind of a side of their project. So if your business is residential real estate and selling residential real estate, maybe then you start to educate yourself and find mentors so that you can start diversifying your skill set on commercial real estate and doing some renovations or other things. I mean, you know so much more about that, Eric, than I do when it comes to that stuff. But I think, like I said before, I've never met an entrepreneur that diversified and had 7 jobs and was successful, or 7 businesses and were successful. They may have 7 different LLCs that are tied to the real estate that they own, but it's all in that core skill set and then diversifying from their investments after they've built some wealth to where they're able to arbitrage. Their living expenses are lower than what they're earning, so they're able to save the difference and be able to diversify their savings from there. So
Yeah, that is beautiful, man. I hope the listeners, like, please, I hope you listen to that because I fell in that trap. Jesse, I don't know if you fell in that trap in your younger years, but I know so many people that falls in that trap of, bouncing and we're reaching over here trying to grab like the easy button. Let's call it for what it is, right?
oh yeah.
Yeah, we think it's the easy button, but it's not. You're missing all of these puzzle pieces. And the only thing you did was you went to Target and you bought a brand new 40,000 piece puzzle set and you're trying to put it together whenever you still have the other one that you just started, right?
Right. Exactly. That is a great analogy, right? You're
Yeah.
not even done with the first puzzle to figure out how to build the second puzzle, right?
Yeah,
So, yeah.
for sure. So so I know one of the cool things, man, merging like financial and legal expertise in estate planning. What is
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit about that. Like let's break this down a little bit.
Yeah. So, a lot of what WisePath does is working with estate and elder law attorneys all across the country. And then obviously now we have this great addition to estate mentors. And one of the things that 90% of our clients that come to us are business owners, they're family men, they have assets they want to pass on the next generation. And so we're now able to offer estate mentors where we can offer revocable trust, irrevocable trust, and estate planning services to be able to protect that. And, in 2026, we don't know what the exemption rate's going to go down to, but we think it's going to end somewhere up about $3 to $4 million. And that may seem like a lot today, but in 1996 up until about 2018, those limits were much, much lower to where most people fell in, had to pay estate or death tax. And so it's something we have to protect our business owners and our clients from, to make sure that they're appropriately set up. And again, last year, September, Congress was trying to vote to get rid of the Roth IRA or Roths and 401k altogether, which would have really disrupted how we plan for our clients, because now we can't plan for after tax. And it feels like every 4 years, when it comes to infinite banking or life insurance retirement plans, that life insurance, because it's a tax free vehicle, they're looking to tax the death benefit on that life insurance to pass on to your heirs, regardless of what the amount is that's in there. So, estate planning is going to be a much, 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 much larger piece of the puzzle as we begin to plan for clients in the initial phases, all the way up through and through retirement, and as they pass on to their estate. So, definitely something that everybody needs to consider in any stage of their life is how their estate plan is set up, and if they need to avoid probate, how do we need to set up sub trust for the children. So because a lot of people don't know this, but like, Eric, you have small children, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you may not all like their spouses for this big wealth creation that you've created. And
Uh,
so we want to set up in a way to where, if one of your children, heaven forbid, were to get divorced, that your assets are not subject to that divorce, right? Or the assets that you've built over your lifetime. And because kids make mistakes from either lawsuits or creditors, that your assets, because they're going to be passing on to your children, that your children aren't subject to have to take it out of your estate to pay those creditors, or the estate, that it's able to be used in the way it was intended, which is to build wealth and wealth transfer, right?
Most people, they think, well, I wrote down a will. I wrote down on
Mhm.
paper and I said, Sally, my daughter gets this. And I said,
Right,
my wife gets this. And then I went to the bank and put it in a safety security deposit.
right,
But you mentioned revocable trust. Let's just stick to that one.
yes.
Tell me about this.
So I want to paint you a picture, Eric. Okay, and
Yeah.
this is an analogy to best illustrate my point. A will is like organizing your financials into boxes. So now you have all your boxes in your hands, and you're holding all these boxes as you walk down the street. And with a will, it's public, so people can see what you're holding in your hand, right?
Hmm.
And when you pass away, those puzzle pieces, or those boxes, those financial boxes, fall to the ground, and someone's got to pick up the pieces. And that's called state administered probate. And that is open to the entire world. So when those assets or those financial boxes pass to your children, it is now public to when they get those, which are subject to creditors, lawsuits, and divorce, right? And
So
so, what?
pa-
Go ahead.
pause this right there. So what you just
Yeah.
said was, Jesse, I have a will and wrote down everything on my will. And I said that my kids will get this. But you're saying that even though I did that, it's still like everything I own will still be sent through probate. And
Yep.
therefore the state is going to dabble their little hands into my stuff.
That's right, because they have to make sure that it passes on seamlessly, because it hasn't gone through pre-probate, right? So it
Yeah.
passes on to your children, and you say, you on your retirement accounts, you on your bank accounts, you have beneficiaries listed on there of who it's going to pass to, and that requires death certificates. And then your home, there could be, as you get older in age, there could be a state recovery from where you needed to use Medicare services or Medicaid services in order to pay for your long-term care. So there'd be many different things that the state has to facilitate when it comes to probate. With a revocable trust, it's like organizing your financial boxes on a little red wagon. Okay. And
Mm.
you hold the handle.
Yeah.
And so when you pass away, that handle falls to the ground, and your kids are easily able to pick up the handle, and no one needs to help them. Right. And what's great about that is that the little red wagon is like its own vehicle. Right. So no one can really see when those assets pass, because they only see that the handle of who the trustee is, who's the one that holds the handle in that little red wagon. And they don't see anything that's actually on the little red wagon, because it passes through with privacy. It negates probate, and they're able to pass on those assets and keep them on the red wagon if they so do choose, through a testamentary trust or a sub trust that's built inside that revocable trust. So it's really great for them just to take that handle and pass it on to the next generation.
So this little red wagon isn't like an open wagon. It has all the same boxes in your will, except this is an enclosed wagon. Nobody can see.
Yeah, when you go through the probate process, no one can see because it doesn't have to go through the probate process, which is a public process, right?
Mm,
Now, they can still take like the government, if you're over those exemption limits, they can still take whatever they need to as part of your estate or pay taxes and things like that or estate recovery. But it protects against your children's creditors, lawsuits, divorce, because everything is held still inside of what we call an open box or a little red wagon, right?
yeah.
And that's where it happens. And so you negate all of that headache for your children a lot of times to be able to protect your assets and to make sure it passes on to the right people without the government having to dabble their hands into it. So it keeps everything private and negates probate, avoids probate.
Yeah, that's super cool. I hope everybody heard that because that has been a challenge for us to set up, but then also it's been a challenge to like me to communicate that to my family who owns wealth or assets. You know, like it's I don't know of another like common misinterpretation than a will protects my assets.
Right. And the will is just, you can make any claim you want to. So, funny story is I had a client in California that he says he owns his house, his car, his retirement accounts, and the Golden Gate Bridge. He thought it was going to be real funny. Right. And when you go through the probate process, you can put anything in your will as what you think you own, and the state has to go through and actually see that you own it and rectify that, right? And so he thought it was going to be real cute by putting that he owned the Golden Gate Bridge. And obviously, it was a longer probate process because nothing could be settled until they could actually see that he actually did not own the Golden Gate Bridge or parts of it or something. He thought it was going to be really funny. Not so much for his family that had to go through that process. But a trust, everything is funded inside of that revocable trust and everything is tied. So the deed to the house goes inside the trust, the title of the cars goes inside the trust, all of your bank accounts are beneficiaries and retirement accounts are listed as the trust. And so no one knows who's going to get those assets. It's just listed as the trust. And then the trustee has to go through what the financial document says with the attorney to then pass on those assets of what the trust says how to pass those assets on. So it just really streamlines the process and makes and avoids a lot of headache. Like if you're in Florida, probate is 3 to 5% of all of your estate assets, which could be anywhere from like if you have a $500,000 worth of assets, could be anywhere from $15,000 to $50,000 to go through the probate process with just a $500,000 of assets, right? So it's very expensive in that process. Where if you just put together a revocable trust, you can avoid all of that probe issues and incapacity issues and privacy issues.
With the trust, the big
Yeah.
thing is you don't have to do this over and over again. You just have
Nope.
to how many times?
Basically it's one and done. You may have amendments as life changes,
Yeah.
if you yourself, have more children or you have guardianship of other children, or maybe you are a little bit more philanthropic as you get older because your kids, you have enough assets that you want to pass on to your kids. Now you want to give back to the community in some way. So you can have what's called amendments to your trust, which are very, very inexpensive to make those changes. A lot of attorneys nowadays will do it anywhere from $100 to $500 to make any of those changes. Very inexpensive to make those changes on that part. So,
Boom. Cool. Yeah, gotta have a trust. Oh my goodness. All right. So what about what about like facing challenges in your life, Jesse? Because we talked a lot about the state mentors and Wise Path and a lot about like mine and your connection story. But tell me a little bit about like the struggles that you face, man, like in the deep end, like your early days. Like, what does that look like? Because you haven't always been where you're at now.
no, definitely not. And I always say it takes a village. I just want to give a huge shout out to all the people that helped me. I had a lot of mentors, guides, coaches that really helped me through. And my biggest thing was I'd go to someone that was way more successful than me, and I ask them what book they're reading.
Mm,
I would do my hardest to read that book as fast and as quickly as possible. And then I would call them back as soon as possible and be like, hey, Eric, I've got some questions about some of the things of the book that you recommended to me. I've finished it, but I still have some questions. I was hoping that you could talk to me about it. And very few people in my mentors and my coach's life ever saw someone have that kind of execution. So I think that's one of the things that I really took on early in my career is I was just so thirsty to get that knowledge from people that I wanted that were more successful than me. And so I want to know what they were learning, what they were interested in, so I can start that rapport and conversation of how I can build. And so in the beginning of my career, I was kind of a chicken with my head cut off. I was trying to find clients anywhere and build relationships with really anybody that can get me in front of people that I could really help and use my skill set for.
Mm.
And then as I started to fine tune it, people started talking about us. And then I had a different challenge where I had more work than I knew what to do with. And I had a really hard time saying no to people. Oh gosh, saying no when because you go from like famine to feast, right? And so, the first part is like you're famished and you're trying to get as much food as you can or put as much on the table as you can as you're building your business because you're trying to figure out how the puzzle pieces fit together, right? And then once you figure out the formula, then it's like you have a really hard time saying no. So I was kind of a solopreneur at that point with more work than I can handle, which creates a bad experience for everybody. So then I had to build a team,
Mm.
and so now I was more of a manager to where I had employees, uh, you know, financial assistants, appointment setters, junior advisors that I was kind of managing to help them do the workflow. And and then you go through another reiteration to where now you have to act like a business owner to where you are managing the managers, the managing directors that have advisors, that have junior advisors, that have legal assistants, that have financial assistants, which then have appointment setters, and then all the operations technology stuff and project managers. It gets a little crazy sometimes, but every part of the journey, you're going to struggle. Every I call it like a phoenix. You break yourself into ashes and you come out of the ashes on fire, right? But you have to go through that shedding of the skin to really build your. It's painful. Every step was painful, right? And I had a coach in college one time that said, Jesse, all the easy work is done, and so the only thing that's left is the hard work. And so that really resonated with me because I was always chasing the easy work to get deals and to help people.
Yeah.
And then, once you realize that all the easy work is done and you can go through and be an expert in that one skill, then it really becomes that now it's abundance. Like the riches are in the niches, right? As you really dial down in your skill set of what you're looking after. And then it's kind of like when you see a red Ferrari, you see red Ferraris everywhere. It seems like,
Yeah.
from your social media to out on the road, and like your level of awareness is higher, right? And so, yeah, I would say every step of my career, every step of our business has been a struggle. Uh, Getting estate mentors integrated with WisePath has been a struggle. We're still in that struggle today, right? Making sure that our clients are up to our standards as far as how much we want to serve our clients, because we have very high standards for ourselves and we want to make sure that we're all in line to make sure that we can provide the best services for people. So, yeah,
Yeah, that so I got a follow-up question on that to transition,
sure.
but to dive back into like your struggle, man, like
Yeah.
tell me like your start.
My
Because you talk
start.
about yeah, so you talk about like reading books and stuff, but like what motivated you to get moving in the direction that you are?
And in my early career, I started working at the bank, and and the bank put me into a leadership program, and I would say that was probably a big catalyst to the people I was able to get in front of, because now I was in front of other leaders at the bank that I could ask questions and see how their career, and so they kind of gave me a shortcut of what I need to learn or what are the most highly valued skills that I need to build in order to be successful. And a lot of that, it's so funny. Like, I feel like everybody should understand operations and sales. I feel like every single person needs to learn those two skills. I feel like, uh, because those I feel like are so applicable to everything we do. And look at Lori. I mean, look at Eric. A lot of salesperson to find a great woman like Lori and have a beautiful family, right? And so,
And get
uh,
over this.
right, exactly. I feel like those are two amazing skills that anybody can learn. So I feel like getting into that banking leadership program really was when we talked about the level of learning and consciousness, I was an unconscious incompetent. And then when I got into that leadership program, I was now a conscious incompetent, and I had access to understanding things that I didn't know, but I still needed to learn. And that's where I was going out to people and saying, hey, I don't want to do business with you, but I'd love to learn and pick your brain on XYZ. I mean, if you look behind me, I've got an entire library over here, an entire library over here of books I'll grab, and I have got notes on everything. So, I mean, I feel like you've always got to be learning. Like you talked about you being on the 75 hard right now, and reading 10 pages is part of that. And I think, for me, I wanted to get one nugget every day from whatever I was reading or whatever I was ingesting. I was very conscious. I'm very conscious of what I ingest as far as my mental capacity,
Oh
because
yeah.
you can either put junk in there, entertaining junk, bouncing things going around, right? Or you can put really things that are going to grow your mindset and make you questions and be curious about things. And I love the era that we're in now with ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT like it's my own Google. I'll ask ChatGPT, hey, what are three research papers about XYZ so I can be an expert on it, right? I'll give it prompts like that, and it will give me where I can go learn that and what books to go read, and then I can go down those rabbit holes and really build my skill set for what I don't know in those particular areas. So I suggest everybody use and abuse ChatGPT. There's a free version, and you can just ask it questions and where to find resources.
Yeah, absolutely amazing, man. So that's what I was looking for, man. Because I remember you told me you started off in the banking industry,
I
and
did.
going back to the average American that's trying to get up there in the wealth. You
Yeah.
start banking industry, and now you're a multi entrepreneur, right? Like you own
Mhm.
multiple businesses, and like we said earlier, it's not that you own multiple LLCs.
Right.
You literally have multiple businesses. Like
Right.
yeah, it's crazy. So like skill stacking, right? You was in
Yes.
the banking industry.
Yep. I
So
use the banking industry to understand financial services and insurance services, and then I grew up in the career to where I learned wealth management, got my securities license, got my insurance licenses, and then I started to dive more into the niches of what I wanted to learn. So I got my CLTC and my AEP. Right. So now I can teach long term care strategies and estate planning strategies, as well as understanding wealth and the risk management side of things, and then just continue to stack on the securities and insurance licenses. And now I'm licensed in every single state for insurance and securities, and I can help people kind of around the country. And then not only that, but now I have employees that know way more than me. From CIMA and RICP and all these other designations out there that I can tap into as like a port of knowledge for all my employees. My employees are like infinitely smarter than me. They are definitely smarter than me, but what I can do is I'm trying to cast the vision of where we want to be and who we want to work with, and just really tailoring our services to those kinds of clients to attract those kind of clients. Yeah.
yeah, that's it's just little things though, right? Like, and I think what we don't realize, because you're saying, hey, like everybody needs to learn operations and sales.
Sales. Yes.
And that's actually what we're specializing in the Deal Boss project. We're
Hmm.
there. Imagine a pyramid. At the top of the
Right.
pyramid, sales. The
Yep.
supporting layer is marketing. The supporting layer
Mm.
up under operations, and the supporting layer up under that is foundations. Foundations meaning leadership, mentorship, like all this stuff
Right.
that you're built upon.
Yep.
And without that, like so many people, they only focus in sales, but then they're like, I can't make any money. I'm like, yeah, because you're not generating any deals. And then when
Yep.
you're generating contacts, you don't know how to support them. You can't follow up once, right?
Right.
You got to
Like
provide
we
that.
talked about
Service.
before. Like again, it goes from feast to it goes from famine to feast. And then that feast, you have to then create better operations so you can manage the inflow of all the clients that you have coming in. So it's yes, 100%.
Yeah. Oh man, I want to dive into that. I'm not so Jesse, when I spoke with you though, you did
Yeah.
mention like, hey, we could probably do like some like in-depth courses on some of this stuff and provide more insight.
We have a training academy. It's like an online course. It's completely free, and it gives a lot of resources when it comes to financial services, investments, insurance, risk management, taxes, entrepreneurship, and business exiting, right? Estate planning. So there's some resources there. I've already given you a lot of that in a separate email that we talked about before. So there's a lot of resources they can go down, and then we can develop something to where we can take some of those videos from our academy and give it directly to you and your users. That's not a problem for us, because the more people, I come from an abundance mindset. I may not get anything from it, but if I can give someone a little bit extra information to help them on their career path or on their entrepreneur journey, I'm all for it. Even if that taking little baby steps, because baby steps lead to bigger and bigger things. Just get 1% better every day. You're 40-fold better than you were the last year before, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely the abundance mindset, man. And that's what's so amazing about being friends with you. Right? It's so cool. So to wrap this up, man, we covered a lot of different stuff um on there. We focused a lot on, like, everyday people, and then we touched just a little bit on high net worth individuals. Is there anything that you would overall encompass and wrap all that up and just say, hey, this is what you need to hear?
Again, it's not a one size fits all, but I feel like, again, if you keep to the fundamentals, 50, 30, 20% of savings, and that 20% of savings goes into short-term, long-term, and retirement buckets, right? And building that wealth, I feel like most people are going to be better off. I mean, I've dealt with janitors that started saving at a very early age that have more money than doctors that have been in their career for 8 years, because they have so much debt, and they have they're constantly trying to keep up with the Joneses to where they're not saving 20% even. So the retirement of that janitor was better than the retirement of that doctor, which is just mind boggling, because it's a completely different skill set. But it all comes down to the fundamentals. I'm telling you.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, guys. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode with Jesse. We're going to be doing some cool stuff. Like I said, he's a strategic partnership for me, and he's going to be a strategic partnership for you. There's a lot of cool stuff. You can learn a lot from this guy. Your next steps, if you're interested in diving into this, is just check out the links and the details below this episode, and that'll take you into the Deal Boss project, and we'll be able to serve you at a higher level there and get the answers that you need. And obviously, all those links for Jesse, you'll be able to get right in touch with his people as well, if you're
Mhm.
looking to move and transition into that world, which you should, because at the end of the day, if you don't have a trust, Uncle Sam's tapping into everything that you work for. Right?
Right.
We covered that.
Be safe, everyone. And Eric, I want to say thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. This was a blast.